Steel cage traps are considered the most effective solution against wild boars. Farmers across America have invested heavily in these systems. Agricultural extension services recommend them. Research universities endorse them. Yet wild boar populations continue exploding from 2 million in 1990 to nearly 9 million today, spreading across 39 states and causing $1.5 billion in damage annually. Something doesn't add up. If these traps work so well, why are the problems getting worse? There's a missing piece to this puzzle that most people never discover. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what that missing piece is, and more importantly, how to use it. But first, let me show you why this matters more than you might think. The numbers tell a story that most people find hard to believe. Wild boars now inhabit at least 39 states, from Texas farmland to Georgia pine forests, even reaching suburban California. They reproduce so quickly that unless at least 60% of the population is removed annually in each area, their numbers continue to skyrocket. Here's what makes this particularly frustrating for farmers. These aren't random mindless destroyers. Wild boars are intelligent animals that learn and adapt. They tear up rice fields, steal corn, churn soil, knock down fences, bust water lines, and even attack farm animals. But their most dangerous weapon isn't their tusks or teeth. It's their ability to remember and teach. I recently spoke with a farming family in rural Texas. They went to bed one night with a perfect cornfield. By sunrise, it looked like it had been hit by a bulldozer. No one saw anything. No cameras caught the destruction, just hoof prints, claw marks, and thousands of dollars in losses. But here's what really bothered them. They'd been setting traps for months using all the recommended methods. The boars seemed to know exactly where every trap was located and avoided them completely. This family's experience isn't unique. Across Texas, farmers are discovering that wild boars adapt faster than traditional control methods can keep up. It's not that the equipment is faulty. It's not that farmers aren't following instructions. Something more fundamental is happening. Research from Texas A&M University reveals that wild boars travel in groups of 10 to 30, move primarily at night, and are nearly invisible to the human eye. But the most important discovery? They're psychological learners. Every interaction with humans becomes a lesson that spreads throughout their social group. This means that every trap set incorrectly doesn't just fail to catch boars. It educates them about human intentions. And once educated, they become exponentially harder to control. Most farmers approach wild boar trapping the same way they'd approach any other farm problem. Identify the issue, buy the right equipment, follow the instructions, expect results. It's logical, straightforward, and completely wrong for dealing with intelligent animals. The first challenge comes with location selection. It seems obvious to place traps where you've seen the most damage. After all, that's where the problem is, right? But wild boars don't randomly wander around destroying things. They stick to well-worn paths, usually near water or food sources. The destroyed field might be 100 yards away from where they actually travel. Imagine you're trying to catch someone who takes the same route to work every day. You wouldn't set up your checkpoint at their office. You'd position it along their regular route. The same logic applies to wild boars, but somehow it gets overlooked when expensive equipment is involved. Timing presents another common misconception. When farmers see fresh signs of boar activity, the natural impulse is to act immediately. Set the trap, load the bait, wait for results. This urgency feels productive. It feels like taking control. But wild boars are primarily active between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m., and they're suspicious of anything new in their environment. Here's where human nature works against us. We see a problem, we want to solve it quickly. But wild boars operate on a different timeline. They need time to investigate, time to feel safe, time to trust. Rushing this process almost guarantees failure. The most challenging aspect involves what researchers call trigger discipline. When you finally see boars entering your trap, every instinct screams at you to activate it immediately. 2 boars become 3. 3 becomes 4. The temptation to act becomes overwhelming. But wild boars travel in family groups with complex social structures. Catch only part of the group, and you've created a much bigger problem. The remaining animals don't just continue reproducing. They become trap-educated. They've learned that human-made structures can be dangerous, and they'll teach this caution to their offspring. A farmer in Texas shared his experience with this exact situation. He caught 4 boars in his first attempt and felt successful. 6 months later, the remaining population had grown larger than the original group, and they completely avoided his property. His quick success had created a long-term disaster. Comment 1. If you find this video interesting, comment 0 if you find it boring. The method that's finally producing consistent results doesn't fight against wild boar psychology. It works with it. Instead of trying to trick intelligent animals, this approach makes them feel genuinely safe until the moment they're not. Corral traps have become the weapon of choice for good reason. These large circular enclosures with diameters ranging from 30 to 40 feet can capture an entire family group in a single operation. Built with steel mesh walls over 5 feet high and remotely controlled gates, they're designed to contain whole herds, not just individual animals. But the trap itself is just the tool. Success depends entirely on how it's used. Location selection requires thinking like a wild boar, not like a human. Look for areas near water sources where feral hogs frequently gather. Search for clear signs of their presence: uprooted soil, wallowing marks on the ground, distinct hoofprints embedded in dirt. These signs reveal their regular travel routes and preferred gathering spots. The breakthrough comes with pre-baiting the area for 3 to 7 days. This simple technique can boost success rates by up to 60%, but it requires patience that feels counterproductive. You're essentially feeding the animals you're trying to catch. You're making them comfortable in the exact location where you plan to trap them. One Texas farmer captured 28 feral hogs in a single night by placing his trap near a creek and using fermented corn as bait. The secret wasn't the location or the bait alone. It was the time he spent letting the boars become familiar with the area before introducing any threat. Fermented corn works because it creates a strong, pungent smell that wild boars find irresistible. Soak corn in water for about a week until it develops that distinctive odor. To humans, it's disgusting. To wild boars, it's like a dinner bell that carries for miles. During hot seasons, adding fresh fruit becomes particularly effective. Watermelon, peaches, or apples provide the moisture that boars desperately seek when streams dry up and the ground cracks. High-protein specialty baits can also help attract larger family groups. But the most important element is patience during the observation phase. You should only trigger the remote trap gate once you've observed that around 80% of the family group regularly enters the trap. This increases the chances of capturing the entire group rather than just a few individuals. If you act too quickly and catch only a small portion, the remaining boars will continue to reproduce and likely return in even greater numbers. More importantly, they'll be educated about your methods and much harder to catch in the future. The moment the trap closes is when real expertise becomes critical. Those captured boars will panic and make distress noises. If these sounds continue for too long, they warn the rest of the group and any other boars in the area. Speed and stealth become essential. Seasoned trappers have a rule: from trap closure to animal removal, no more than 30 minutes. Any longer and you risk educating the local population about your methods. This time pressure requires preparation that most people don't consider. Some use soundproofed livestock trailers, lined and prepped for quick loading. Others have remote holding pens positioned far from active boar territory. Every method serves the same purpose: keep it quiet, keep it clean, get out fast. Weather plays a role that many farmers overlook. Wild boars become more cautious during storms, high winds, or extreme temperature changes. Their natural survival instincts override their feeding behaviors during these times. Experienced trappers monitor weather patterns and delay operations when conditions aren't optimal. Scent control matters more than most people realize. Wild boars have an incredible sense of smell. Human scent on trap components can make them suspicious for weeks. The soap you used to wash your hands hours earlier might be enough to warn them away. There's also the factor of what happens after successful trapping operations. Many farmers think the job ends when the animals are removed, but wild boars have excellent spatial memory. They remember where danger occurred and will avoid those areas for extended periods. Changing trap location every few months becomes an effective way to disrupt their learning patterns and avoidance behavior. What worked once in a specific location may never work there again. But the same methods can be highly effective in new locations. If you know farmers or landowners who are struggling with crop damage and wasting money on methods that aren't working, please share this video with them right now. These insights could save them thousands of dollars and finally give them the breakthrough they've been searching for. Don't let them keep making the same costly mistakes that educated wild boars use against them. There's something magical that happens when farmers stop feeling helpless against an unstoppable force. When they realize they're not fighting a losing battle, but engaging in a winnable war that just requires the right strategy. It transforms not just their farms, but their entire outlook on what's possible. I've witnessed this transformation firsthand in rural communities across Texas. Farmers who were considering abandoning land their families had worked for generations suddenly rediscover hope. Children who thought they'd never be able to continue the family legacy start making plans to stay and build something better. When neighboring farms coordinate their efforts using these methods, something remarkable occurs. Instead of displacing the problem from one property to another, they actually solve it together. Surviving animals have nowhere to retreat, nowhere to regroup, nowhere to establish new territories. The community reclaims control of their own destiny. These coordinated efforts create more than just crop protection. They rebuild the social fabric that connects rural neighbors. Farmers who hadn't spoken in years start collaborating. Knowledge sharing that used to happen naturally in small communities gets revived. There's power in unity that goes far beyond just controlling wild boar populations. The economics tell only part of the story. Yes, coordinated regional success can eliminate crop damage that has plagued areas for decades. Yes, the return on investment is remarkable. But the real victory is watching farmers regain confidence in their ability to protect what their families have built over generations. This isn't just about trapping animals. It's about proving that intelligence, patience, and community cooperation can overcome any challenge, no matter how daunting it seems. When ordinary people use extraordinary strategy, they achieve results that seemed impossible. Every farmer who masters these methods becomes a guardian of something precious. They're safeguarding a way of life that connects us to the land and to the timeless wisdom that patience and strategy triumph over brute force. The wild boars taught us that when communities unite behind proven methods, even the most persistent challenges become solvable. But what happens after these millions of trapped wild boars are captured? The massive processing operation reveals an industry most people never knew existed. From specialized mobile units to shocking end destinations, the scale will amaze you. Stick around until the end. What you'll see will leave you stunned. But first, you need to see how Brazilian farmers are stopping thousands of wild boars from tearing through their land. Trust me, you won't believe your eyes. Sounds crazy. In Brazil, farmers are digging war-style trenches just to stop millions of wild boars. No electricity, no technology. Just 5-foot deep holes in the ground. And it's working. 90% damage reduction in weeks. These aren't ordinary pigs. These are 200-pound hybrid monsters traveling in coordinated packs of 100 plus, causing 400 million in annual damage. They've outsmarted electric fences, sophisticated traps, and high-tech sensors. Yet, somehow, the oldest military strategy known to mankind stopped them cold. What makes this ancient solution so effective when cutting-edge technology failed? The answer reveals something surprising about innovation and problem-solving that every farmer and business owner needs to understand. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why sometimes the simplest approach beats the most advanced technology. Before we reveal the breakthrough solution, you need to understand why conventional approaches proved inadequate. Brazilian farmers initially relied on every modern agricultural defense available. Electric fencing systems, the type that successfully contains large livestock, proved ineffective. These animals learned to neutralize power sources with surgical precision. Some demonstrated tool use, employing sticks to test electrical current before approaching. Steel containment systems and mechanical traps appeared promising until farmers discovered a fundamental limitation. These animals function as coordinated units. Capturing individual animals simply educated the entire group to avoid specific areas indefinitely. Imagine attempting to drain a reservoir using a teacup. The scale mismatch made success impossible. Firearms presented their own challenges. Consider tracking 50 to 100 fast-moving targets through dense vegetation during nighttime hours, often in adverse weather conditions. The mathematics simply don't favor success. Additionally, environmental regulations and safety considerations create complications that most rural all-famer understand well. You might wonder what solution could succeed when electrical systems, mechanical devices, and traditional hunting methods had failed. Sometimes the most revolutionary solutions appear deceptively simple, and what happened next proves this principle perfectly. Consider Santos Francisco, a 58-year-old agricultural producer from Sao Paulo who had suffered complete losses of 2 consecutive sugarcane harvests. Facing financial ruin with no conventional solution proving effective, he made a decision that would transform farming practices across the region. He picked up a shovel. This wasn't amateur weekend excavation. Francisco contracted industrial earth-moving equipment, surveyed his property boundaries, and began constructing what would become the foundation of a defensive network now spanning thousands of acres throughout southern Brazil. These excavations represent engineering elegance through simplicity, 4 to 5 feet in depth, exceeding 3 feet in width, featuring steep vertical sides. No electrical components, no mechanical triggers, no technological monitoring. Simply earth, strategically carved to create barriers these animals cannot overcome. The results exceeded all expectations. Within weeks, crop destruction decreased by 90%. After 3 months, numerous operations reported complete elimination of animal intrusions across their perimeters. The effectiveness stems from fundamental principles. Unlike electrical systems that can be disabled or mechanical devices that can be circumvented, these barriers maintain constant presence. They require no oversight, no service calls, no backup power systems. They function as permanent guardians that never rest, never malfunction, and never lose effectiveness. However, as word spread and thousands of producers began excavating, a new consideration emerged. And it's more complex than you might imagine. Comment 1 if you find this video interesting. Comment 0 if you find it boring. In agriculture, as in life, simplicity rarely equals ease of implementation or minimal expense. Excavating protective barriers sounds straightforward until you consider the scope. We're discussing excavation, 4 to 5 feet deep, 3+ feet wide, extending for miles around entire agricultural operations. This exceeds weekend home improvement projects by several orders of magnitude. Average costs approximate $2 per linear foot, seemingly reasonable until you calculate that modest to medium operations require 3 to 6 miles of continuous barriers. Larger enterprises need 10+ miles of excavation. Initial investments suddenly range from $15,000 to $100,000 before any agricultural production begins. Initial construction represents only the beginning of financial commitment. When seasonal rains arrive, these excavations face identical challenges that military engineers have addressed for centuries: erosion, flooding, and structural failure. Producers have invested in drainage infrastructure, stone reinforcement, and in some cases, concrete reinforcement for unstable soil conditions. Rocky terrain can triple expenses. Some operations require industrial drilling equipment, transforming what should be basic excavation into major construction undertakings. Despite these substantial challenges, producers continue excavating. Why? Because the cost of losing an entire season's production in a single evening far exceeds barrier construction expenses. But financial considerations aren't the only concern, and the complications we're about to discuss caught everyone off guard. Every engineering solution creates new challenges, and sometimes those challenges present dangers nobody anticipated. No defensive system achieves perfection, and these excavated barriers have generated complications that would concern any safety professional. Serious incidents have occurred: agricultural equipment plunging into unmarked excavations during pre-dawn operations, delivery vehicles becoming trapped when attempting to cross unmarked sections, and unfortunately, incidents involving farm workers and children falling into mud-filled excavations during rainy periods. The fundamental issue isn't the excavations themselves, it's management protocols. Without appropriate warning signage, temporary crossing structures, or designated safe passage points, these defensive excavations can rapidly become hazards for the people they're designed to protect. Experienced producers have learned to install reflective warning systems, wooden barrier structures, and small steel bridges at regularly used crossing points. Others have created temporary earthen bridge sections for heavy machinery access. However, all these measures represent additional expenses and ongoing maintenance requirements. This situation reflects a principle most Americans over 50 understand from personal experience. Any major property improvement or agricultural project requires comprehensive safety planning, not just immediate functionality consideration. Yet despite these challenges, something remarkable has developed from this grassroots innovation, and it's changing how entire communities think about problem solving. Sometimes the most significant innovations emerge not from research laboratories, but from ordinary people who refuse to accept defeat. Before this excavation revolution, Brazilian agricultural producers operated in what military strategists recognize as reactive positioning, constantly responding to damage after it occurred. Repair fencing, replant crops, clean up destruction, repeat endlessly. As these barriers demonstrated their effectiveness, something fundamental shifted. Producers began thinking like strategic planners, developing defensive strategies before planting seasons, mapping terrain vulnerabilities, and creating what agricultural experts now term proactive agricultural defense. Even more impressive, neighboring operations began coordinating their excavation systems, establishing interconnected defensive networks protecting entire regional areas. This represents the agricultural equivalent of medieval communities joining resources to construct connected fortification systems. This evolution transcends individual farm protection. It represents community defense strategy. The traditional individual responsibility approach has transformed into collaborative protection systems that would impress military engineers. These producers have evolved from vulnerable targets into strategic planners, designing their own tactical maps and establishing defensive perimeters that prevent invasions before they begin. This transformation brings us to the broader lesson this Brazilian innovation teaches about human ingenuity and determination, a lesson that applies far beyond agriculture. The most significant battles often involve people whose names we'll never know, protecting resources we take for granted. When viewed from aerial perspective, these defensive excavations create geometric patterns across Brazil's landscape resembling ancient fortification networks. For families whose livelihoods depend on this land, they represent something far more meaningful. They're monuments to survival and determination. No television networks document this quiet revolution. No awards ceremonies recognize the innovation. Yet every foot of excavated barrier represents a family meal protected, agricultural heritage preserved, and harvest secured against overnight destruction. These producers aren't seeking recognition or fame. They're fighting for fundamental necessities, feeding their families, maintaining generational farmland, preserving their way of life. Surrender isn't an option when everything depends on the next harvest. In our interconnected world where solutions seem to require internet connectivity, monitoring software, and backup power systems, there's something profoundly meaningful about the fact that determination and basic tools can still create effective solutions. When you sit down for your next meal, adding sugar to your coffee or enjoying corn products, you probably won't visualize these excavations. You won't hear construction sounds or smell fresh earth. But the food you're consuming was protected by people whose names you'll never know, working in fields you'll never visit, creating barriers that operate in complete silence. Their quiet determination reminds us that the most important work often happens far from cameras and headlines, accomplished by ordinary people who simply refuse to quit when everything seems impossible. Chung-Tane, the Brazilian farmers, taught us something profound. When facing an impossible problem, sometimes the answer isn't more complexity. It's focusing on what actually works. The question is, which approach is actually better? The $50,000 high-tech trap that catches entire herds at once, or the simple $15,000 ditch that works forever? That story, and the shocking answer, is waiting in the next video. Have you ever stood in the woods and felt the ground tremble before you even saw what was coming? Foreign wild boars usually weigh between 220 to 440 pounds. That sounds impressive until you meet the monsters we're about to show you. Some tip the scale at over 1,500 pounds, the weight of a full-size grand piano, barreling through trees like matchsticks. And they don't just run, they bulldoze. Trees snap, fences collapse, and when they attack, they do so with a fury that feels almost unnatural. You're about to witness 6 of the largest, most dangerous wild boars ever encountered in the wild. Some took multiple bullets to bring down, others kept fighting, even with bullets in the chest. They've ripped up crops, wrecked tractors, and in some chilling cases, charged straight at people. But stay with us, because this isn't just a tale of chaos. What happens when a 700-kilogram beast meets a bow hunter with nothing but patience and precision? And how did one monstrous boar become a feast that united an entire village? You'll find out, and by the end, you may look at wild boars and the hunters who face them with newfound respect. Deep in the wooded backcountry, where Morning fog clings to the branches and silence carries weight. A seasoned hunter and his loyal dogs were following a familiar trail. It should have been a routine morning, but nothing about what happened next was routine. Out of the brush exploded a 300-pound wall of muscle and rage. The dogs, brave as they were, took one look and froze, then turned. They ran. The hunter didn't blame them. This wasn't just any boar. It was something else. With no time to aim and nowhere to run, he scrambled up the nearest tree. From his perch, heart pounding against bark, he watched. The boar didn't flee. It paced beneath him, eyes locked, snorting like a locomotive. It lunged once, twice. The bark tore beneath its tusks. For what felt like forever, the dogs didn't return. Then, just when it seemed this standoff might never end, another hunter, drawn by the chaos, burst through the thicket. Calm hands, focused eyes. He raised his rifle. One shot, one breath, one end. The giant collapsed. The forest fell still. And for a moment, the only sound was the hunter's shaky breath from up in the branches. Have you ever seen danger so close? All you could do was climb? But if you think that was intense, wait until you see what happens when two hunters face one that refuses to die even after the first bullet. In the golden stillness of a Texas cornfield, where rows of dry stalks rustled gently in the breeze, two hunters waited. One crouched at the forest's edge, rifle tight in hand. The other moved slowly between rows, heart tuned to every sound. Then, like thunder from the undergrowth, it happened. A 350-pound boar burst from the corn, its eyes locked on freedom. It didn't run, it charged. The first hunter didn't flinch. He aimed, fired. The shot landed in the rear flank. The beast dropped, but not fully. Its back legs gave out, but its front limbs kept clawing forward. The ground trembled beneath its crawl. It wasn't running. It was dragging itself with defiance, as if powered by nothing but rage. And yet, the hunter didn't rush. He walked forward slowly. Calm, measured. Not a sound but boots on soil. Then, at just the right angle, he squeezed the trigger again. Silence. The boar was still, but the adrenaline still surged. If that rattled your bones, brace yourself. The next one takes a bullet and doesn't even flinch. It stood there like a living fortress, a slab of dark muscle, bristling with power. The hunter stepped in close. Calm breath, steady grip. Then he fired, straight into the beast's side. But the boar didn't flinch. No stumble, no squeal. It turned, slow and deliberate, locked eyes with the man, and just stood its ground. That was no animal response. That was a challenge. The hunter didn't back up. He reloaded, aimed higher this time, dead between the eyes, and fired. This time the monster dropped. Dust rose. Silence fell. Up close, its bulk was staggering. Its back rose nearly to the hunter's chest. It hadn't just survived the first shot, it had dismissed it. Have you ever seen a creature take a bullet and keep standing like nothing happened? In a remote corner of Southeast Asia, where dense reeds grow taller than a man's shoulders, a group of veteran hunters prepared for what they knew would be no ordinary chase. They released their dogs, dozens of them, each trained, each fearless. Within moments, the bush erupted with noise, barking, thrashing, screams of nature colliding. At the center of it all stood a shadow of brute force, over 480 pounds of raw wild boar. The monster spun, charged, kicked. It didn't try to run. It tried to fight them all. But this time, it was outnumbered. The dogs moved like clockwork, darting in, drawing blood, retreating just before a tusk could strike. It was a dance of instinct and bravery. Within minutes, the boar collapsed, not from fear, but exhaustion. And when the villagers arrived, they didn't just stare. They gasped. They wrapped chains around its legs, hitched it to a tractor, and hauled the carcass out like a felled oak tree. Even the metal loader arms groaned under the weight. Imagine seeing a creature so heavy it bends steel. Would you believe it if you didn't see it yourself? Did you enjoy this incredible wild boar hunt? If yes, comment 1. If it felt boring, comment 0. I want to hear your thoughts. Deep in the Appalachian woods, where the trees grow thick and the silence is sacred, a lone hunter stood in wait. No rifle, no backup. Just a compound bow, a steady breath, and a quiet kind of courage. The brush ahead rustled, a low grunt. Then, like a living shadow, an enormous wild boar stepped into view. Over 530 pounds, jet black, rippling with tension. Its shoulders loomed like boulders, its snout wide enough to swallow a man's fist. And it was close, just 20 feet. The hunter didn't flinch. He released. The arrow hit, dead in the chest. The beast squealed, not in fear but in fury, and bolted. Branches cracked, leaves scattered. The woods swallowed it. Most would have panicked, not him. He waited, then began his approach, tracking slowly, silently. Blood marked the path, each step a message from the wild. 20 minutes later, nestled under a tangle of brush and dried leaves, the titan lay still. The arrow had done its job, but only because the man had done his part. Calm, precise, patient. He stood over it, a man alone with something ancient, fallen, but not dishonored. No gun, no noise. Just one shot and one chance to get it right. Would you have taken it? But not every encounter ends with a weapon drawn. The next beast? It didn't fall in the forest. It walked right into town. It was a quiet afternoon near a roadside market, until the trash cans began to shake. A man looked up, then dropped his phone. There it was, a wild boar the size of a compact car, snout deep in the garbage, tearing through bags like tissue paper. Its weight was so immense it tipped the entire metal bin over like a toy. Pedestrians froze. A child screamed. Cars slowed. Phones came out because no one would believe this unless they saw it. And they did. The footage spread like wildfire. Before the day was over, it had hit local Hong Kong television. The boar wasn't just a nuisance. It became a walking warning sign. Nature is coming closer, and it's hungry. No one fired a shot. But this moment reminded everyone. These beasts don't just live in the woods anymore. They're adapting. They're moving in. What would you do if a 700-pound animal showed up outside your grocery store? Now imagine this. Not just one, but dozens. In the next scene, a monstrous boar takes multiple bullets before it even slows down. In the heart of South Sudan, where open plains stretch into the horizon and the air carries the heat of ancient soil, a true titan fell. It weighed in at 682 kilograms, over 1,500 pounds. A boar so massive, it made full-grown cattle look small by comparison. It didn't go down easily. A team of seasoned hunters and their relentless pack of dogs had tracked it for hours, through thorny brush, over dry riverbeds, across cracked savanna soil. They stayed on its heels. Shot after shot rang out, but the beast wouldn't yield. It crashed through acacia trees, bleeding but unbroken, until finally, after multiple direct hits, it collapsed. Even in death, it was difficult to move. They wrapped thick chains around its legs, but it wasn't enough. A truck alone wouldn't do. They brought in a tractor, and even that strained under the load. Its body was so wide, it spanned the road. Its tusks curled like ivory sabers. And for those who saw it with their own eyes, it was like witnessing a prehistoric creature pulled from time. Can you imagine staring down a beast bigger than a grizzly and having to face it with nothing but grit and bullets? But what if I told you there's more? In the next chapter, you'll meet giants that not only shattered expectations but broke the internet. In North Carolina, a seasoned hunter had been tracking a particular shadow for weeks. Not just any boar, a beast that left trench-like trails through the woods and snapped small trees like twigs. Then at last, he had it in his sights. The shot was clean, the impact echoed across the valley. The giant fell. But what stunned the world wasn't just the takedown, it was the size. The video, raw and unedited, hit the internet within hours. Millions watched, jaws dropped, as the hunter stood next to the beast, a creature so wide it barely fit in frame. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Poland, another legend was rising. A young hunter, barely in his 20s, posed beside a boar tipping the scales at over 600 kilograms. Its sheer volume dwarfed the man beside it. A single photo, one click, and the image exploded across every platform. These weren't just animals anymore. They were symbols of strength, of challenge, of victory. Which one impressed you more, the American legend or the Polish titan? Let us know in the comments. Because now comes the most unexpected part of all, how these monsters became dinner. The hunt was over, but the real story was just beginning. In a clearing near the woods where firelight danced on old oak trunks and voices echoed in low, reverent tones, the villagers gathered. At the center lay the giant, not a trophy, but a gift. First came the skinning. The boar's hide was so thick it took 2 men just to peel a single flank. Like leather armor, it resisted every blade. But with patience and care, they worked through. Then came the butchering. Hundreds of pounds of deep red meat, sectioned with practiced precision. Shoulders, loins, ribs as thick as a man's arm. Some cuts were marinated in garlic, wild pepper, and forest herbs. Others were laid into cast iron pans, sizzling over open flame, fat crackling, the air filling with the primal aroma of fire and meat. The sound of children laughing, elders telling old hunting tales, the clinking of tin plates. This was more than a meal. It was a celebration of skill, of nature's challenge and man's respect for the life he'd taken. Would you try a bite from one of these titans of the forest? Say yes if you would, or no if you'd rather watch from the sidelines. Let's be clear, not every wild boar weighs over 1,500 pounds. In fact, most range between 200 to 300. But don't let the size fool you. Even a 220-pound boar can wreck an entire season in one night. One boar in one field can root up acres of crops, tearing through soil, smashing young plants, chewing through irrigation lines. They don't just eat, they ruin. To farmers, they're not just wild animals. They're invaders. Some fight back with traps. Others rely on dogs, and more than a few keep a rifle close by every single night. Because these boars aren't shy. They'll come through fences, they'll frighten livestock, they'll rip up what took months to grow in minutes. And when you've worked the land your whole life, when you know the feel of good soil and the pride of a clean harvest, it hits hard. Ever lost sleep because you could hear rustling outside your barn? Farmers have, and sometimes they never forget that sound. You've seen giants fall. But when millions of wild boars swarm across farms, it's no longer a hunt, it's a full-on war. Across the American South, farmers now fight back with helicopters, drones, and sharpshooters. Don't miss our next video, how farmers battle millions of boars from the air. It's not just hunting anymore, it's survival. Pit traps? Sure, they work, and work well. But in parts of the southern United States, where the land rises into steep hills and dense mountain woods, digging one isn't just hard, it's impossible. And in those regions, the wild hogs still come. By the thousands. Tearing up fields, ruining harvests, and costing farmers millions. They slip through fences, vanish into forests, and leave only destruction behind. But here in the southern US, farmers aren't backing down. By day, they hire helicopter sharpshooters to chase the herds from above. By night, they deploy drones and thermal scopes to track every movement in the dark. This is high-tech hunting, born not from sport, but survival. But what happens after the trigger is pulled? That's the part few talk about. Because wild hog meat, while edible, often carries parasites and dangerous bacteria like brucellosis or trichinosis. That's why federal regulations ban its commercial export. These carcasses can't go to market. So farmers face a grim choice: consume the meat themselves after cautious, meticulous preparation, or bury it deep in the ground. This isn't just a fight to protect the land. It's a full-circle struggle, from detection to disposal. Today, I'll take you inside this battle from both the ground and the sky, to see how American farmers are fighting back against millions of wild hogs, and what they must do after the shooting stops. High up in a remote corner of East Texas, where the hills roll like ocean waves and pine forests crowd every horizon, a quiet war was brewing. The land was breathtaking, but also unforgiving. Rocky ridges, steep inclines, and thick brush made it impossible to lay traditional traps or dig pitfall holes. "Out here," said Farmer Hank, "even the dirt fights back." What the land gave in beauty, it took away in options. And for 5 nights straight, it was invaded, not by storms or thieves, but by a herd of wild hogs that came under the cover of darkness. By dawn, 40 acres of young corn had vanished. Not harvested, but shredded, uprooted, consumed. It was like a ghost had passed through, Hank said. No fences could hold him, no traps could catch him, and you can't chase him on foot, not in this terrain. The numbers told one part of the story. Over 6 million feral hogs roam the U.S., costing farmers more than $2.5 billion every year. They breed fast, 2 litters a year, up to 8 piglets each time. But in these rugged mountains, they were more than a nuisance. They were a force of nature. But the true damage wasn't just counted in dollars or bushels. It was deeper. Each dawn revealed more than lost crops. It exposed a way of life unraveling. Generations of labor, rooted in this rugged land, were being undone night after night by an enemy no fence could stop. Conventional defenses had collapsed. Night watches failed. Even guard dogs, brave as they were, came back limping. The boars weren't just increasing, they were evolving. They struck in smarter ways, adapted to human tactics, and disappeared into the woods before a rifle could be raised. And then from deep within that desperation, a radical idea took shape. What if the only way to stop them was to hunt from the sky? With the mountains too steep to climb and the forest too thick to trap, ground tactics had failed. The hogs knew every ravine, every thicket, and they vanished into the shadows long before a rifle could be raised. But the farmers refused to surrender. Instead, they turned to something most had never imagined: aerial pursuit. Pooling their money, a coalition of desperate landowners hired elite hog hunters, sharpshooters trained to fire from helicopters, and seasoned bush pilots who could navigate treacherous terrain with the precision of combat veterans. Their mission was simple but brutal: track, target, and eliminate thousands of feral hogs by air before another acre was lost. At dawn, the first chopper lifted off from an open cornfield, its rotors kicking up dust and broken husks where crops once stood. It wasn't a helipad. It was a scarred battlefield, freshly cleared for war. This was where the counterattack would begin. On board were seasoned hunters, men trained not in simulations, but in seasons of real-world experience. Each one held a rifle steady against the thrum of the chopper's vibration, eyes locked on the ground below, scanning for the telltale movement of destruction. From the sky, the forest looked deceptively calm, but below, shadows shifted. In a clearing near the creek bed, a herd of wild hogs had emerged, sniffing, rooting, unaware of what circled above. The pilot dipped the nose. The shooters leaned out. No thermal scopes, no fancy tech, just sharp eyes and steady hands. One hunter steadied his breath, lined up with a moving silhouette, and squeezed the trigger. Crack, a clean shot. One hog dropped before it even knew it was seen. The herd panicked, scattering toward the tree line, but the hunters were ready. They tracked with their eyes, not sensors. reading the terrain like men who'd grown up in it. A second hog bolted across a dry stream bed. A burst of dust, then another shot. Dead center. Pass after pass, they followed the herd through thickets, over ridges, down rocky slopes. A group of 3 tried to vanish into a gully, but the chopper swung around just in time. A short call over the radio. Left ridge fast, and 2 more sharp shots rang out. One dropped instantly. The other didn't make it 10 feet. The air filled with smoke, grit, and adrenaline. Every shot had weight. Every movement demanded focus. And with each pull of the trigger, the tide began to turn. By sunset, the hills no longer echoed with grunts or rustling. Over 70 hogs lay still. The fields were quiet. But darkness was coming, and with it, one final hunt. What do you think about this bold response? About what these farmers have to endure just to protect their land? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. When the sky became too dark to fly, they brought the war back to the ground. The wind picked up, clouds blanketed the sky, and visibility from above dropped to nothing. Helicopters were grounded. But the hogs, relentless as ever, were already on the move. So the farmers brought the fight to the ground. They geared up with the best tools they had, suppressed rifles, night vision optics, and drones hovering high above, scanning the land for heat and motion. No speeches, no spotlight, just silent coordination and deadly precision. At 9:43 p.m., the first signal came in. 3 hogs moving along the tree line. A team of hunters moved quickly, rifles raised. The lead shooter spotted the largest boar first. He steadied his aim and squeezed the trigger. A muffled shot cut the air. One hog dropped where it stood. The others paused, confused, still unaware. A second shot. Another hog down. Then a third. In less than 30 seconds, the entire group was eliminated. No panic, no escape, no warning. Across the field, other teams moved in synchronized sweeps. The drones continued to relay positions in real time. Every few minutes, a short burst of controlled fire echoed faintly through the darkness. Every shot clean, every target confirmed. A hog was busy rooting through the soil, snout deep in broken stalks, when a single suppressed shot ended its search instantly. Another was gnawing on scattered grain, unaware it had been spotted, until it collapsed. Silence mid-bite. One by one, they fell. Too distracted by the promise of food to sense the danger closing in. The suppressors kept the battlefield quiet. The night vision made darkness irrelevant. And the shooters, calm, disciplined, moved from one target to the next with quiet confidence. No hiding, no chasing, just relentless clinical efficiency. By the early hours of morning, dozens of hogs lay still. The field was quiet, not from fear, but because there was nothing left to run. It wasn't glory, it was duty. And that night, the farmers won it back, one silent shot at a time. What did you think of this intense night hunt? Drop a 1 in the comments if you enjoyed it, or a 0 if it didn't hit the mark. We want to hear from you. No more guesswork, just precise, unstoppable pursuit. In a battle where numbers and speed favor the enemy, technology became the great equalizer. The introduction of helicopters changed everything. From the air, hunters could see what the ground couldn't. Entire herds moving between tree lines, patterns of destruction, escape routes through ravines. Each flight covered hundreds of acres in minutes, turning vast farmland into a manageable battleground. And it wasn't just about speed. Aerial visibility meant the hunters could strike first. Coordinated flyovers revealed not just where the hogs were, but where they would be next. Choppers circled low, pushed herds into open ground, and guided ground teams to the perfect position. Then came the drones, the farmer's silent guardian. small, fast, and nearly invisible at night. They scanned fields from above with high-resolution cameras. A single drone operator could track dozens of hogs in real time, pinpointing their location with GPS accuracy. The combination was devastatingly effective. More than just firepower, this was smart farming, using the sky as both shield and sword. For every hour invested in flight time, farmers saved thousands in potential losses. For every drone launched, a threat was intercepted before it became a disaster. It was no longer about reacting. It was about dominating. And in this war, those who controlled the air controlled the land. But once the hunt was over, a new question emerged. What do you do with the body? When a 200-pound boar hits the dirt, it's not just a threat neutralized, it's a carcass. And what happens next could mean nourishment or danger. Is it safe to eat? How is it processed? What diseases must be avoided, and how is the meat preserved? Because dropping the hog is only step one. The real challenge, making it safe to serve. After the final shot is fired, and the fields grow silent, the work isn't over. It's only changed form. For the farmers and hunters, dealing with wild hogs doesn't stop at the kill. These animals, despite being destructive pests, are still living creatures with flesh and blood. But their meat presents a serious challenge. Unlike regulated livestock, wild hogs roam freely, often scavenging through trash, contaminated water, and decaying matter. As a result, their bodies may carry dangerous bacteria and parasites, including Brucella, Salmonella, and Trichinella spiralis, a parasite responsible for the disease trichinosis, which can be fatal in humans. Due to these serious health risks, meat from wild hogs is strictly prohibited from entering export markets. There's no USDA or international equivalent that certifies wild-caught feral hog meat as safe for commercial trade. That leaves only two options: home processing for personal consumption or complete disposal through burial. To safely turn wild hog meat into food, careful handling and cooking are non-negotiable. These animals often carry parasites and bacteria, so every step from field to table must be done with caution. First, always wear gloves when handling the carcass. After the hog is harvested, the outer hair is best removed with a propane torch, which singes off the bristles without damaging the skin. This is followed by scraping and rinsing to clean off ash and debris. Leaving the skin on is preferred by many for grilling, as it becomes crispy and flavorful when cooked correctly. Once clean, the carcass is quartered, dividing it into shoulders, hams, ribs, and back straps. Each piece should be inspected for any signs of disease. Tools and surfaces must be sanitized regularly, and meat should be kept on ice immediately after cutting to prevent bacterial growth. Cooking is the final safeguard. Wild pork must be cooked to an internal temperature of at least 186 degrees to destroy parasites like Trichinella and any lingering bacteria. Slow cooking, smoking, or pressure cooking are popular choices, as they break down tough fibers and enhance flavor. Sausages, pulled pork, and smoked ribs are common dishes when processed properly. By following these safety steps, wild hog meat becomes not just edible, but delicious. The key is patience, hygiene, and heat. Done right, what once was a threat in the field becomes a hearty reward on the plate. For these farmers, the battle doesn't end with the hunt. It extends into kitchens and fields, demanding both skill and respect. Because when dealing with wild hogs, one mistake can lead to more than just bad meat. It can lead to real danger. Would you dare to eat wild hog meat? If yes, type yes in the comments. If not, if you wouldn't touch it, comment no. Let's see where you stand. Every hunt, every long night in the fields, every hard choice about what to do with the carcass, it all speaks to the grit of rural life. These farmers don't seek glory. They seek peace and survival. These farmers aren't chasing headlines. They're protecting a legacy. And if you've stayed with us this far, you've seen the heart behind the hunt. So hit that smash subscribe and buckle up. Because next, We take you inside one of the world's most secretive animal empires, where millions of crocodiles are processed to feed a $100 million luxury demand. Watch it now. You won't believe your eyes.